If you've just come on, please put your name, maybe your role and your organization. So if somebody later on tries to identify who you are as you're chatting, they can do so, and we will get out all the participants. So welcome, everybody. My name is Tracy Mendez. I'm with the Greater Austin STEM Ecosystem. We are delighted to have you. My partner in crime, Kristen Bonds, is on, as well as Austin Hall. Austin, a Texan, not just a Texan at heart, a Texan visiting here in Fort Worth, but out of DC. He's with the STEM Education Coalition out of DC. So those are the three of us. I don't know if she's joined yet, but we have our sister organization, Alamo STEM Ecosystem, that is to join today, Dr. Stephanie Garcia. And we do have one other ecosystem. They don't usually come to these calls with the, I'll laugh, say dirty word of policy. Texas ecosystem is housed under TEA. And so between Alamo and Greater Austin and TEA, we do work together, but obviously TEA doesn't like to come to policy conversations, not appropriate for their work effort. But we're delighted to have you guys. Thanks for being here. Many of you joined the last time. We do have some newcomers. The objective of today's call is to talk about a roundup of what happened in the legislative session. And there were a lot of successes, more than we probably would have ever anticipated. Not that Carol doesn't think she was way overdue, and she'll talk to that in a minute, having gone around this a couple times. We will start off with something that sounds, kind of adjunct to what we're doing, but it isn't. CHIPS Act and semiconductor. Frankly, with everything that President Biden has done, there is a whole lot more visibility on workforce and that critical linkage and bringing in a lot of new champions, especially industry. And we've got several players with industry on the phone to participate and make this a much more visible concern that we have out there. It's not just education for the sake of education. STEM and CS education absolutely feeds into the workforce of our future. As we go around today, and I do have to do a head nod to our ES3 partners. I really liked some of your commentary. And so you see a lot of the vision is how do we increase the pipeline for all students, especially as we get ready with these math pathways to be proficient with STEM and CS, not only for their future, but for Texas's competitive economic future as well. As we talk through these different opportunities, and we have the champions for each one of these, either riders that pass, piece of legislation, policy changes. I'd also have you keep in mind, I know there's big implementations that each and every one of you who is a champion are moving forward on, but there may be places to leverage interdependencies. Because in the past, STEM or CS were always seen very separate, and it is a chance for us to try to hopefully long-term work closer together in the visibility to the bigger community and to our leadership here in Texas. If you'll go to the next slide, when we talk about the challenge out there, and I think, Kristen, there you go. This is actually out of a recent document that it's July 2023 about the semiconductor, but I happen to like it because it frames the problem really well. If you look at the entire US economy through at least the intent here is 2030, all right, there is a lot of jobs that will be filled. And just to help you kind of gauge as you look at this chart real quickly, technicians, meaning out of high school with some kind of certification or associate's degree, engineers, usually 4-year, and then computer science. You will see there's a huge need for computer science. Nothing new to Carol. She's been on that trek for many, many years. But I think the bigger issue here and the capture that we walk away with is out of the 2.4 that will be filled, there is still 1.5 million jobs that won't be filled. And so the question is, how do we solve that problem here in Texas? So if we go to the next slide, that's just the last setup for all our different speakers. For those of you who joined back in, or I think it was early March, we spoke about the fact that there is a pipeline and there were several different initiatives going on. And as I said before, the great news is we've really had some positive wins. I framed this in a way of looking across from left to right to the value chain. You know, you start in elementary and ultimately you go over and you become part of the workforce and the specific wins that are out there. Not a new win because it was in place as we went into the session, but you have the TEACs, which were for science that are moving forward, and for tech apps, which is equivalent to computer science. Carol did some really cool stuff. I think it was just last month, Carol, with K through 5 and PD, and I'm sure she'll touch on that in moving forward. We also have the E3 Alliance that worked with several partners over the state's ecosystem, and they were able to forward something I think is just incredibly impactful. We all will find it to be 8th grade advanced mathematics is no longer an opt-in. It is an opt-out based on your star in grades or star score in 5th grade. So they'll talk about the fabulous opportunity of having that aperture widen dramatically for kids to be comfortable and better prepared to do the other opportunities down the road. I don't know, did Denise Rose get a chance to join yet? Have you noticed her? She is. Thumbs up. Hi, Denise. Don't see your face yet. But Denise is the lobbyist who supported a fabulous win in, I won't tell the numbers, I'll leave them up to you, Denise, to the growth of the mobile STEM labs. Let's say we had one poor little lab running all across the little old state of Texas, trying to go to different school systems, ISDs, and share, and that has been a dramatic win. And then we have Jenna Courtney, who's the director of TextPost, and she'll talk about a win in one of the riders as well for out of school time and bringing more money to that and playing forward with our kids and leveraging some of the most creative time they have, which is out of the school environment. The last two I want to bring your attention to, we won't talk in any depth today, but it is about in high school, for those of you who are familiar with CCMR, college career and military readiness, they are changing the accountability rating, and there is money involved with the points. It used to be at 60%, it is now 88%. And some of that, they're looking retroactively to the kids who just graduated. That is going to be a critical cog because it will help us pull forward all those kids who do well now in playing in math and move them forward to play in roles that we need. And then lastly, we did talk about the Texas Community College finance that was approved in House Bill 8. You'll see references below, and that moves forward as well with positive momentum. So lots of great stuff. Every one of those has got, separate implementations that need to happen, and they're just getting started. So don't expect to have all the answers. I know if you're one of those champions, you already know that there's lots to be done still. But on the other hand, as we continue to talk and prepare 18 months from now for the next session, hopefully we will do a great job at connecting dots where it is logical. So with that, I'd like to go to that last one that you see up there, which is the Semiconductor Innovation Consortium and the funding that went with it. But to kick that off and to give those of you who aren't as familiar with either the CHIPS Act or the latest, here is our own Austin Hall. So Austin, take it away.
Thanks, Tracy. So as Tracy mentioned, I'm Austin Hall with the STEM Education Coalition, actually based in DC, but I'm currently in Texas, a native Texan, try to get back here at least twice a quarter. And I think the Texas heat must have melted my laptop camera or something because it is not working. So apologies for being off camera here. But yeah, this is a great opportunity to talk about the win in the legislative session on the Semiconductor Consortium and the opportunities that exist for this group and beyond here. So the CHIPS Act, just a quick little overview of how we got here. About 1 year ago, actually yesterday, President Biden signed the bill into law, obviously with the overarching goal of reshoring domestic semiconductor production. There are a few key players from Texas that helped get that bill across the finish line. Senator Cornyn was a very key player, as well as Representative Michael Burgess. And, it kind of came about, the Congress spent a good year and a half working on this. and there was a thought that it would be dead after typical DC partisanship, but at the last minute, it was revived as a part of a larger package. And it got over the finish line, much to the stakeholders' excitement. So a quick overview of what's in the bill. There's an overall authorization of $280 billion over the next 10 years for scientific research and development, commercialization, semiconductor manufacturing, and workforce development in key technology areas. Everybody likes to think of this as a CHIPS bill, but it is larger than that. There are actually 10 key technology areas that are listed as a part of this package, ranging from advanced manufacturing to artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies. So the easy way to think about this, though, is to break it out between the CHIPS part and the science part. The CHIPS part is the semiconductor manufacturing, the incentives for manufacturing companies. There's a national security, defense technologies manufacturing piece, and a little bit of workforce funding. So to clarify, about $53 billion of this bill was actually already appropriated as a part of the authorization. And so that is funding that Congress has already given the agencies to carry these programs out. And a large part of that is this CHIPS manufacturing piece. So that's kind of the priority piece of the bill right now as it's being implemented. But the other part is the science part, which is a larger part and more of a longer term part. And that is the education and workforce development, research between higher education institutions and companies, some regional innovation programs, and economic development programs. An important point to underline here is that the underlying theme of the bill and its implementation is coordination, collaboration, and systems alignment. This is a truly transformational investment in domestic manufacturing and workforce development. But to make it all happen, it's going to require stakeholders that have never really worked together, coming together and working together, coordinating, and having state governments and local governments work with stakeholders to better align their systems to achieve the goals of this bill. So next slide. So going back to the state session here, both chambers overwhelmingly passed the Texas CHIPS Act, and Governor Abbott signed it into law on June 9th. The bill creates the Texas Semiconductor Innovation Fund and provides $700 million to subsidize companies that manufacture chips in Texas, and provide matching funds to universities and other state entities that invest in chip design or manufacturing projects. The bill also provides nearly $670 million to A&M and UT for the creation of research and development centers. And importantly, it establishes a consortium of industry, workforce, and education stakeholders out in a consortium that's operated and overseen by the governor's office to develop a comprehensive strategic plan to meet economic and workforce development needs. The CHIPS and Science Act, passed by the federal government, quickly prompted semiconductor companies, states, higher education institutions, localities, and other stakeholders to start planning and pursuing the competitive funding that's provided by the CHIPS and Science Act. And this state bill is a direct response to that. Texas actually put together one of the most significant financial packages around the country. And it's expected that the Department of Commerce will really like this package, and will really take it into consideration as they evaluate the CHIPS proposals that would be put forward both on the manufacturing side and on the research side by entities in Texas. So this is a big win for the state to put forth the most competitive proposals that they can to the feds as they try to win some of this funding. And it's going to be a significant amount of funding should that come through.
Hey, Austin, quick question from the chat from Carol. Is there a specific agency here in Texas running point on leveraging chips across various sectors, or is it the governor's office?
Yeah, it's the governor's office that is going to kind of manage this project. Specifically, it's probably going to be managed mostly out of the economic development office. And really what this is going to come down to is making sure that the entities that are putting forth applications have the right matching incentives and right matching funds to be eligible for the federal projects. So making sure that everybody has the money they need to put forth the strongest application and making sure that it's all aligned. All right, so where are we at now, and what's next? In short, the process right now is all about competing for the funding. The companies that are going after the large manufacturing program, which those applications are due toward the end of October, they're all focused right now on making sure those applications are tight and getting them in. The federal government took an approach of, if they build it, they will come to this thing. So it's all about, let's build what we need to build first and then do the longer term challenges next. There are other programs that are part of Chips and Science that folks are putting applications together for. One of those is called the Regional Innovation Tech Hub. That's run out of the Economic Development Administration at Commerce. And that's more of a regional economic development long-term play across these 10 different key technology areas. So there's a lot of application, a lot of competitive application preparing going on right now. And so what we're seeing is that the focus on workforce development and longer term education needs, those conversations are happening, but not at the scale they need to happen at yet. And that's just because all these companies and all these stakeholders are focused on these applications right now, which is fine. That's what the federal government wanted to do. But as we see on this next bullet point, at the end of the day, the real challenge here, both near term and long term, is going to be workforce. I don't know if folks saw it in the news, but one of the huge semiconductor manufacturing companies that was going to, they're still planning to build a plant in Arizona, had to pause that project just because they didn't have the workforce needs even close. So they're going to take, a 2-year pause, probably risk a lot of federal funding to help with, building out this site. And it's all because they don't have the workforce ready to go. And so, that's going to be the focus after, this October deadline and the summer deadlines for these other programs is how can we work together as a coalition, as stakeholder groups, to align the workforce and education system to meet the needs of these projects and related projects in those key technology areas. And again, that challenge is getting stakeholders that haven't traditionally worked together to engage with one another. And this presents an opportunity for the 89th legislative session that we can look forward to, even though the 88th just finished. But that is going to be some systems alignment in working on policy that improves the education and workforce pipeline priorities around these areas. And it's also an opportunity at the federal level. So that's where we're at now. That's what's next. And I'll just go to one last slide to promote, the real value of STEM ecosystems here. In fact, Congress actually recognizes value in the Chips and Science law. They noted that STEM ecosystems are a great partner to include in a consortium on a lot of these programs. And so, you look at all the agencies that are involved in this at the federal level, all the entities at state government, industry, obviously all the education partners in Texas beyond those that are just listed here. But, this is the real value of a STEM ecosystem, being that convener to, make sure there's a space to talk through these challenges and to try to make the connections happen to address them. So, as companies think about their workforce needs and higher education thinks about how to meet those needs and making sure that students from K through 12 are prepared to go into a higher education pathway or straight to a career pathway. These are the conversations that the STEM ecosystem is really good at facilitating, and we look forward to supporting these efforts as we continue. So with that, I'll pause there. See if
we may not want to take a question yet,
Okay.
simply because we've got Jennifer. We're going to lose Jennifer in a couple.
Okay.
And I wanted to make sure Jennifer could talk to the E3. And again, one of the key elements to opening the aperture way at the base, which is getting, kids with their basic advanced math skills. So Jennifer, welcome. Heather's here too as well from E3. And if you could hold any questions or throw them in the chat. For Austin, Austin's not going anywhere. So Jennifer, take it away.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I guess I should say, and thank you for this opportunity. Myself and my colleague Heather is here, and we're going to kind of engage you in Senate Bill 2124, which passed this legislative session, which is focused on starting that pathway for students to be engaged and on the right math pathway that will lead them to post-secondary readiness and, most importantly, completion, so that they can transition into a high-valued credential that earns them a sustainable wage. And so the goal with SB 2124 is to make sure that we're putting the right students on the right math pathway as early as middle school. So what we know about math pathways is oftentimes all data will support that students who complete 4 years of math in high school, as most of you already know this, and that fourth year of math being a college-aligned math, are 4 times more likely to complete post-secondary. And that's a credential, an associate, or a 4-year bachelor's degree, and yield a sustainable living wage job after that. What we found is of those students that are doing 4 years of math, and that being a college-aligned math, majority of those students had engaged in Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So we really wanted to understand who's taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade. And at the time that we started looking at this data, there was huge disparity of students that were taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade, especially among race and ethnicity. And so we wanted to dig a little bit further into that and really understand, well, who gets the opportunity to take Algebra 1 in 8th grade? What allows a student to take that course as early as middle school? And what we found is that decision is made for students in 5th grade. And in our state, that decision was very inconsistent. So districts could decide, and even in some districts, it was up to the campus. And so some districts and our campuses across our state were using our state standardized STAR math results in 5th grade. Some were basing it on teacher recommendations. That 5th grade math teacher, or I should say 5th grade teacher, because there's not a dedicated math teacher, would make recommendations of which students they thought were prepared to enter middle school on an advanced math pathway. Some, it was up to the counselor. The counselor was looking at that student's performance over K through 5 and making that decision for the student. So it's very inconsistent. And what our data was showing us is that of those students that were making it on advanced math, and of those students that were taking Algebra 1 and were successful, we were seeing huge disparity gaps from our white and Asian students to our Black and Brown students. So we tested a strategy in Central Texas over the last few years, what we refer to as an opt-out policy, meaning that any student who scores within the top 40% or the top 2 quintiles of our state standardized tests are automatically placed on an advanced math track in 6th grade and middle school. And it is up to the parent if they choose to opt them out of the math pathway, advanced math pathway, rather than requiring parents to have to opt students in. So that's why it's referred to as an opt-out math pathways bill, because parents have the option to opt out. In studying that in Central Texas over the last 5 years, we've actually closed the disparity gap between our Black and our white students by 91%. So really, this is an access and opportunity that we want to make sure that students who are showing proficiency and success on certain math, that they are put on the right pathway that will guide them and prepare them for high school 4 years of math, hopefully that being a college-aligned math in their senior year, and then transitioning into post-secondary prepared to enter the courses and the degree that they wish to intend to receive and be successful in that. And so SB 2124 goes into effect September 1. Right now, we are working with TA on rulemaking. We expect this year to be a planning year. So we would use the fifth graders of 23, 24 will be the first fifth graders that will be identified based on this new policy that will then enter math pathway, advanced math in sixth grade. The reason we wanted that planning year is because we know a lot of our schools, some schools or rural schools may not have different pathways that students can come on. And so we want to allow them that year to prepare, really work on their master schedules, think about the math pathways that they have for students and the teacher's credential to teach those courses. And then also with the policy, we wanted to make it flexible that they don't just have to use STAR results, but we're looking at top 40%. So the top 40% students that score either on STAR, they can use MAP data, or they can use a local math assessment that is valid in order to identify who of those students are in the top 40% to then enter advanced math pathway in middle school, to increase those that are taking Algebra 1, to increase opportunity for 4 years of math, and more importantly, that fourth year math being a college-aligned math. There, we're not doing questions, but Heather will be on the call for the remainder of this. And so if you have any questions, she'll be happy to answer any of those.
I'm sorry, I was trying to rush to you. So if anybody has a question for you right now, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I'm just saying Austin's around, so we can always get back to Austin.
Carol has a question in the chat. If a school doesn't currently offer algebra in middle school or other advanced pathways to any students, will need to create a pathway? Sorry, if I said that wrong, Carol can correct me.
That is correct. They will need to create a pathway. And that's why this year planning is important. And at E3, we are, like I said, working with TN rulemaking, but two other things that we're doing is we're creating a communications campaign because we want to make sure that this policy is not just known at the top level, which is typically what happens with policies, but our students and families are aware of these opportunities and why, with the value they provide, our math teachers, our math coaches. And so we're really looking at how are we communicating that across state. And the other thing that we're developing is implementation workshop series. So thinking about it in three components: logistics, master scheduling, courses that you're offering, teacher credentialing, those kind of things. We're thinking about communication. How are we messaging this to our students and families within the community? Because most of you may be aware, oftentimes advanced math is messaged as a deficit. I know when my students transitioned into sixth grade and I went to the parent night, it was kind of like, we have advanced math, but it's super hard. And if you don't already have a student that is doing their homework without you having to tell them, which I don't know any, if you have an 11-year-old that you're not having to do their homework, please tell me how to do that. And so it really scares parents and makes parents think, well, I don't want my kid on this advanced math pathway, right? Middle school is already going to be hard as it is from what I hear. So communications, templates, how are we messaging in an asset framing rather than deficit? And then the other part of that is professional learning and development, our teachers. How are we making sure our teachers have the self-efficacy to teach advanced math in middle school? And then also growth mindset. And so really tailoring those two things, because we're going to see an increase of a diverse classroom in our math. And what we should see in high school is at least 40%, if not more, students taking advanced level courses and college aligned courses. So we also want to work with our high schools, and you have 7 years to kind of prepare for this. And so how are you thinking about the teachers that are credentialed to teach college aligned courses or college credit bearing courses, and what courses do you have enough math courses that you're offering opportunities for students to engage in?
Are there any other questions before Jennifer has to drop off? I will just make the comment that 3 or 4 years ago, I said, is there any way we could ever do opt-in? I believe this time I'll call you infamous Carol Fletcher helped force that in her old school system where kids had to opt out. I don't know what all the parameters were, Carol, but I thought that was brilliant. And I had people tell me that was not going to be feasible with our legislature. So kudos off to E3 for tackling what seemed like the monster that, yep, there you go. It was because of E3, Carol. So this is just like a super bonus. And I don't think many of us were quite aware of the significant trajectory you had and the success you were going to have. And I think Representative Howard, right, says Texas needs to be talent ready and talent strong. And that's all about this group here, connecting those dots. So bravo.
Well, thank you. It's all of y'all's hard work that allowed us to get to this point. So I appreciate it. And Carol's one of my biggest fans. So I'm So yes, well, thank you all for having me, and Heather will be on for any other questions at the end if you
Okay.
like some.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing you again.
Thanks.
So take it away. That was Carol's intro. Carol has been at this a long time, and Carol's had some success too. So it's the
All
Carol Show.
All right. Thanks, Tracy. Appreciate the opportunity to get an update on all of these things. And so I'm going to be talking about some work done by the CS for TX Coalition, which I want to start out by thanking Tracy and Kristen and others here in the STEM ecosystems here in Austin, and also getting the STEM ecosystems across the state on board with several of the things we were trying to promote for CS education specifically at the legislature. And then also Spencer Schumacher is here from the IT caucus, the legislative caucus that is headed by Representative Capriglione in the Texas House and now expanded to the Texas Senate. They were instrumental in the work that was done this session of finally getting it across the finish line to have funding for computer science teacher professional development. It's called the Texas CS Pipeline. It wasn't a bill that was passed. It was actually a rider to the state budget. And essentially, as Tracy's kind of outlined in the summary document there, essentially it was $10 million over the biennium dedicated to the Texas CS Pipeline Initiative. And this $10 million could be supplemented by an additional $2 million per year of the biennium if the pipeline initiative is able to raise corporate and philanthropic funds of up to $2 million a year as well. So potentially $14 million from the state over the biennium to support computer science teacher professional development, basically to build the capacity of our K-5 teachers in order to understand how to implement for the first time ever things like computational thinking, coding, programming, and cybersecurity in the K-5 space because of the new standards, to support our secondary teachers, particularly those who are going to teach courses like CS1, CS2, APCSA, who need a computer science certification, which is not an easy thing to do. And so there's a lot of work that has to go into building their capacity to learn the content they need to get certified. And then also supporting teachers really to implement courses from, middle school through high school, et cetera, in computer science. So curriculum training as well. That funding is sitting at the Higher Ed Coordinating Board right now. It's not as yet clear exactly how that money is going to kind of flow out and get distributed, but we're hoping it'll be done in a coordinated manner. I'll let actually Spencer speak to this also. Spencer, if you'd like to add anything about the effort as well.
Well, I mean, I'll just say it was a big coalition win. It was almost a 6-year process of trying to get that over. And, the only reason we were able to do that is because there's clear alignment from the higher ed side, there's clear alignment from the K-12 side, there's clear alignment from the industry, and there's clear alignment in the legislature. So, it's definitely a testament to the success of building coalitions and sticking to it. So thank you to everyone on the call who played a part in that. And thank you to Carol for raising the flag on this for so many years.
And just to answer Philip's question really quickly, Philip, that would be my ideal solution, obviously, would be to bring back We Teach CS collaboratives. That would be our goal. With the idea being, these funds would be distributed to entities all over the state to help support teachers regionally, but also leveraging potentially a lot of the work that we've already done, a lot of the resources we've already created that could be shared across the state to support teachers.
Any other questions for Carol? Because if not, we'll bring on Denise because she's got another exciting initiative. And, over time, hopefully some of these initiatives will have dots that connect. Congrats, Carol.
Thanks, Tracy. I'm going to speak a little bit low just because I'm in a different building outside of a meeting. just wanted to give the group a brief update on the mobile STEM lab program. This session, we were successful in requesting and achieving a budget increase through a rider that would allow for the addition of 8 labs. Well, I think we're saying 8 total, so 7 more labs on top of the one that we currently have. So it's a one-time investment by the state to help build and support the infrastructure for the labs, and then the funding to support operations in fiscal year 25 of the state budget, because we think that's when they'll be online. And this is really trying to promote a regionalization of this model and allow more access and more schools in the program. I think you all have probably seen or heard that the wait list for this program is enormous. It was up to 800 schools at the beginning of last school year. And so, again, adding these labs isn't going to completely solve the problem, but it will certainly alleviate some of that demand. They've just been really popular, and this will also cut down on travel time. Texas is huge. It's really hard to get one lab to 20 something different educational service regions, and the number of schools they see in a year, they're putting a ton of mileage on the lab. So this will just, we think, possibly allow for an increase and a shorter travel time.
So Denise, we had a question from one of the industry players, AMD. Can you give your elevator speech on what the lab is, maybe even speak to how it lands, what it accomplishes between the teacher PD, the setup, and what kind of grade levels it attempts to
Sure.
help?
It's K through 8, and it is right now, it's one lab. It's a converted tractor trailer that basically supports STEM education at these grade levels. And so Learning Undefeated is my client who I work with. They are a partner with TEA. They've developed the curriculum in conjunction with TEA. It's TEKS aligned. And so basically they spend a week-ish at each school location. The schools have to go through a process at TEA of requesting a visit from the lab. The focus is on rural and underserved areas, school districts in those areas. And the lab is there for a week. It's basically like a field trip for the kids out to a parking lot. It's, parked on the school premises, but detached, obviously. And then the next week it travels to its next location. They do develop teacher professional development with TEA. And so that is left behind for the schools to continue to use throughout the year, any programming or lessons or things like that. Does that help?
I would imagine that gave Anita the backdrop, so that's perfect. And if you can imagine, going from 1 to 8 is back to Denise's comment, this regional model will be incredibly helpful in getting a lot more visibility. So thanks, Denise. What a Herculean win for you guys. And so we're still waiting for the implementation to finalize itself. And fair statement.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Super. Are there any other questions? If not, we'll go over to another win with Jenna Courtney for out of school time.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Courtney. I am the Chief Executive Officer at the Texas Partnership for Out of School Time. I feel like I know a reasonable number of people on this call, but just very quickly, an intro to Text Post in case you don't know us yet. We are a statewide intermediary organization that supports programs and professionals in out of school time. And so kind of the 3 main things that we do to carry that work forward are bring those professionals and program leaders together, offer technical assistance and professional development, both related to general quality in the field and related to specific initiatives like STEM, And then the third thing that we do a lot of is advocacy work. And so by background, that's actually where I come from. I don't come from the out of school time field. And so as this group knows really well, achieving public investment, achieving systems change, achieving even like recognition and awareness of all of these things that are moving our kids' lives forward, that all happens at the state legislature. And so we were successful this session for the first time in getting some money dedicated to community-based out of school time programs. That's not to say that there isn't any money for out of school time in the state budget. It is massive. It is larger than most countries. And so there are programs that exist for specific providers, sometimes specific jurisdictions, specific regions. There are obviously federal programs that support this, but for general community-based programming, there is nothing like this until this session. And so it's a really huge win just to exist in this way for the first time. And so we were able to get $2.5 million a year, $5 million over the biennium. We're really approaching it in partnership with TEA as prototyping and piloting some things with the obvious goal of going back and asking for more in the future, doing our work really well in the beginning and going back and hoping that we can do more. And I think two unique parts of the work and the way that we framed it to the legislature and some things that are really important to us are this money will go to direct service, so it will get directly to kids. And we are also investing in the infrastructure that supports all of those programs. There are a lot of regional intermediaries across the state, and we all work together. TextPost has started serving as the convener of those more local and regional intermediary organizations. And we think that investing more in those organizations and their ability to capacity build in their own communities is a really important part of this. And also putting processes in place for more cohesive and coordinated quality assessment, evaluation, things like that, right? So that we're looking ahead to building a really robust system of community-based out of school time in the state of Texas. The other thing is that this money is specifically targeted for mental health, but we were quite intentional that we wanted to focus on those universal promotion and prevention strategies that can help every single kid, in part because we know that out of school time, just by its nature, accomplishes those promotion and prevention goals really well. And so the thinking is that by and large, we will be getting more kids into better programs, right? There's that access question and that quality question, and that will help to bolster youth mental health because of those promotion and prevention strategies that we're also going to be championing. And I am happy to answer any questions about all of that. That was a lot, very succinctly.
Any questions for Jenna? It sounds like there's lots more to come, and at the moment it is not a STEM or CS specific vehicle. We understand that, but you got to get an infrastructure in place. And I know you're working with Trish as well on, I think it's $1 million moonshot.
Million Girls Moonshot.
It's a girls in there. I thought there was girls. Sorry, Trish, I should have known better. There was girls to be had in the $1 million piece. So thanks, Jenna. And Jenna will continue and out of school time specifically to be a key element, because we realize this is where a lot of the CS and STEM hands-on and if I can call it, failures can happen. Kids can play, kids can learn all around that problem solving and computational thinking. So it's a huge opportunity long-term for us. So I'm trying to go back, make sure I didn't miss anybody. So I think we're coming back full circle. Any questions for Austin? I think he covered both elements, which was what was happening not only in the federal level, but also specific to Texas. Any burning question that didn't get answered? And then we have a question from Heather back to the to Jennifer. So
one thing, Tracy, that I'll note that I missed is that there's still a lot of funding out there to be achieved through CHIPS and Science. And a lot of that is going to be through the National Science Foundation. And they're really encouraging applications from a consortium of stakeholders, including K through 12, out of school time programming, and community colleges and universities. And so, as often as we can, as groups on this call or beyond, can put forth a strong consortium of players to achieve any of these grant goals, there's a lot of funding to be had.
And this
I
may be
would
an
echo that. I was at a meeting, I'm on the advisory board for a national organization, Teach AI. And I was speaking with a NSF program officer this weekend, and he was saying how, they're actually struggling to get all the money out the door that they want to get out the door, particularly related to AI. So I would definitely encourage people to be thinking strongly about how they could partner with others on grant proposals to NSF related to that.
And I would just offer, while we're early in actually trying to come together on a particular grant, this obviously can be a form, at least to connect the dots. Back to those interdependencies, whether it be for specific money or for the implementation of your present win that's out there. So, this is meant to be open dialogue. We've got about a little less than 15 minutes left. Comments, thoughts. This was just, again, meant to be a debrief, and then we really, as we continue the implementation, need to continue the dialogue and have some very specific action items or grants that we can go forward collectively on. Anybody, please feel free to jump in and open your mic up.
Hey, Tracy, this is Ann at AMD. I have a quick question. I say it's quick, who knows? But I think it's really for Austin regarding the CHIPS Act funding around the projects in Texas. Do you know, was most of that geared toward manufacturing? I'm just thinking about companies like ours that do semiconductor design, and we're not in the manufacturing space anymore. I don't know a whole lot about that legislation. I feel bad. I probably should know a lot more, but just curious as to, is there room in there for projects that are not necessarily manufacturing related?
Yes, there is. There is funding for the design phase. I can't recall off the top of my head if it has the same deadline as the manufacturing piece, but Matt, do you have an idea? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Is this better? I think the deadlines are similar, but Anne, your team, your government affairs team, my counterparts, John Hoganson, are some of the experts on this, both on the limitations of the CHIPS Act for chip design, as well as the opportunities and potential future opportunities for funding chip design. So you might check with John, as companies like ours are less focused on the chip design phase.
Okay, great. Thanks. I appreciate that. I was just curious. I know he's given a couple of updates from that with the national lens, but I didn't know as it pertained to Texas.
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to the Texas CHIPS Act question.
Okay.
Other questions or comments?
I just wanted to put this out there to the industry folks who are here. So Matt and Ann and anyone else, is there anything that like this group of folks on this call or anything that we can do to kind of support y'all in y'all's applications? Is it good to have meetings where folks from different companies can talk about it, even though you're in a little bit of competition, like conversations like this one that y'all just had? Is there anything else we can do to support, I guess is my question.
For me, it's great to hear the information and to hear who's doing what and the different things that are coming through as a result of what this coalition is doing.
Here, good information. We're focused more on seeking R&D funds, but there are many workforce requirements in the application process for fab funds, and so the companies that are looking to invest in new fabs will be looking for partners in meeting those workforce requirements. So I think that's an opportunity for a lot of the organizations that intersect with this group. And so if you aren't already reaching out to those, the Samsungs and TSMCs and Intels of the world, then I would encourage you to do so.
Thank you, Matt.
I think being such a big state, you'll find there's the R&D efforts that are going on with leaders like UT and A&M. And then there's some really interesting, more industry-based consortiums with universities like in North Dallas. So lots of places to play. All right, any other questions or comments? Again, everybody might be just digesting and trying to figure out where the connectivity points are.
I just wanted to throw out there, this, we have this career cluster in CTE, advanced manufacturing. And I know we had a meeting, the STEM ecosystem had a meeting with folks like from Samsung and other places and Texas Instruments several months ago about the need for this prepared workforce. And it's not really directly related to computer science, but tangential. So I would love to know, what is it that we need to be doing in high school to do a better job of preparing that workforce? Because I'm not sure that's super well defined. And we've got some robotics courses and stuff like that in this advanced manufacturing pathway, but I'm not really 100% confident that it's really aligned to how do we prepare if we're going to bring, 10 fab plants to the state of Texas, and we need, literally 10,000 technicians to do that. What are we doing in high school to actually prepare students for those kinds of jobs other than just the foundational math, science type coursework? And what do we need to do different? I don't know the answer to that, but I would love to hear from people who, may have some thoughts on that. What can we do to support teachers, to be in a better position to prepare kids in that space also?
One of the things we hear from the companies in particular is that the lack of hands-on skills and experience from students directly in high school that come directly from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so more of a focus on hands-on science or hands-on, STEM really.
Mm-hmm.
But also I think a huge problem that, we're all trying to figure out solutions to is the awareness piece for these kinds of careers. Sure, you have the skills that, you need to make sure they have, that students have, but also the awareness of these career paths. It's it's a challenge. I was at an event a couple of weeks ago. It's called Students for STEM Advocacy. And it's a bunch of high school students who are passionate about STEM education careers. And I asked the question, who's excited about a career in the semiconductor ecosystem? And only one person out of the 50 raised their hand.
Mm-hmm.
The question was semi what? We have a hand raised by Ted, and Ted has a lot of probably good commentary on this. So Ted, I see your hand.
So first, this has been a great overview of what's been going on. So congratulations to all the folks who've been working, on the math initiatives and the mobile STEM initiatives. I mean, it's all really great. So I'm super happy to hear all this. With respect to semiconductors and secondary education, the awareness comment is spot on. And so a lot of the companies in North Texas and some of the community colleges, we're working together to try to figure out a way to send this recruiting message and brand it in a way that's compelling and that some of the students like it. With respect to actual activities in the high school, one of the things we're thinking about is trying to get some of these electronic technology capabilities within the high schools. And so these would be the kind of experience-based activity where the students could complete an L1 certificate, for example, during high school. It's hands-on, it's circuits, it's all that kind of stuff. And the cost is ballpark $200K capital cost for 36 students to have this experience during a year. And it's a one-time capital cost. And then the teacher has to have some training. And so if you're talking about scaling the semiconductor workforce, especially on the operator technician side, that's the kind of thing that we're trying to figure out if that makes sense. Can we go ahead and populate 10 high schools, 20 high schools in the region, and take that burden off of the community colleges, and then have the more expensive capital things, automation classes, mechatronics classes, those are more like $1 million in capital, have those based at the community colleges, and the less expensive ones at the high school. So, Kara, we're nowhere close to a solution yet, but that's the kind of thing we're trying to think of. And one of the interesting comments that I've had interacting with some of the companies and community colleges in the area is that the folks who are from the city, the students from the city usually don't have as much hands-on experience as those from the rural areas. And so, kids who grow up in farming, et cetera, have that, direct experience, which kids in the urban areas may or may not. So it's been interesting to see how the different areas respond to this too. So we'll keep poking away at it, but that's one possible approach.
Thank you. Well, we would love to work with anybody that wants to be doing that. We're not necessarily the people to create it, but what we do we teach CS and EPIC is scale good stuff. We find really good quality things, and we figure out a way to scale it to a broad and diverse range of schools all over the state of Texas. And so would love to partner with folks who can kind of help put together programs that could potentially get scaled. So it's not dependent on having necessarily an industry partner close by or the right community college close by. It's something we could bring to kids all over the state.
And Jenny made the comment in the chat that this doesn't have to be done in schools, in the classroom. That's absolutely right. I mean, a lot of the best STEM activities that we've been finding are after school, are summer programs. And so that's absolutely right. And we're trying to figure out how to leverage that too. But trying to scale it and institutionalize it, if you will, within the high school is a little bit of a different challenge. So, yeah.
So I'm trying to be conscious, we're at a closing point, but it sounds like there may be some more specific action-based kind of conversations we could have and dive into details like the one we have now. So I saw some notes going here. We'll capture this, make sure we haven't missed any big questions out there. We'll share back who was on this call. Is there anything else burning before we drop? Okay, please feel free to get a hold of myself or Kristen. You've got both our emails, and we'll go from there. Thanks all. Enjoy the vestiges of summer. Bye now.